Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Hoping everyone out there is enjoying your weekend. This update, we're going to break down the details for you over the next 7 to 10 days, plus take you out in the tropics and let you know what might be developing out there. So let's take a look at the setup for this afternoon. You can actually see on the North American view, we've got a pretty, significant trough for July standards coming in from Canada. That's going to be pushing into portions of New England and diving just a little bit further south as we get into the middle of next week. But yes, further south, there's that heat ridge going to be dominating for a good part of the lower regions of the US. There's a little surface low, a little tropical wave out here off the coast of South Carolina. It actually had a lot of spin action just right off the coast yesterday, but that's actually going to be heading out to sea. There's also a tutlow out here across portions of the Pacific. That's going to be the culprit of actually increasing some of the monsoonal flow across the desert Southwest, and also be the culprit of actually finally dropping Phoenix below 110 degrees. It's been plenty warm up there in Alaska, but there we do have another trough, especially, impacting portions of far extreme portions of the West Coast. But we had a lot of storms yesterday. We talked about the setup for this very severe weather setup yesterday, and it definitely came to fruition last night around 8 and 9 o'clock. We had a severe thunderstorm warning, destructive warning, had up to almost 100-mile-per-hour winds. They did have confirmed winds 93 miles an hour in Iowa. They actually had several observed tornadoes up in this region. And then we had very high winds draped across northern Illinois, getting into Indiana, even clockwards up towards almost 80 miles an hour, even into Indiana. Those continue diving into Ohio and impacting portions of West Virginia as well as into Virginia. Had some larger hail associated with it. There were some pockets of tennis ball and even some baseball size hail was reported. And unfortunately, it brought a lot of power outages along the way too. At one point this morning, they had upwards to 500,000 people without power. Now it has come down as daylight has come to fruition and restored a lot of the power, but there's still some states that still have over 50,000 without power into Wisconsin and portions of Indiana as they continue to try to restore power after those devastating winds that impacted those regions late last night into the overnight time frame. But the heat continues to expand and building across the middle of the country. We've got widespread heat advisories across the southeast, and those are the orange shaded areas. That's the 105, 110, what it feels like to the body, and then 110 plus up here in portions of Kansas as well as into Missouri. And going forward for today, here's the jet stream, folks. I mean, further south you live, it's hot, right? It's what you typically see in summer because overall the jet stream is more or less well to the north. And here's where the jet stream really is going to be highlighted for a good part of the week. So you've got much cooler conditions out here in portions of the Great Lakes, up here in the New England, up here in the Northeast. But there's those dominating ridges of high pressure parked itself over the southeastern regions, especially over the southern plains and the Four Corners region. So you're going to be seeing a lot of heat. But on the northern periphery of that, you are going to be seeing more storm development for this afternoon. So it has shifted a little bit further south, really where the heat advisories and the excessive heat warnings are. So we should have another complex of storms blowing up in the afternoon time frame across northwestern portions of Missouri here, and these will be diving east southeastward, bringing some of those higher wind gusts and some of those larger hailstones along the way. And in fact, the Storm Prediction Center yet has another enhanced risk. And in fact, I thought yesterday they were going to upgrade it to a moderate, and some of those winds I felt like they did warrant a moderate risk yesterday. But nonetheless, we do have some more bigger storms that's going to be forming along this boundary, and the East Coast is going to be impacted again. So yesterday they had all those higher heat indices across the East Coast, upwards to 105, 110, even portions of DC and New York City regions. And they're going to be impacted with heavier thunderstorms today. So definitely be on high alert. And of course, further south, you kind of the ridge of high pressure kind of sticks out like a sore thumb across the southern plains. And there's the setup for potentially Sunday. maybe drop it a little bit even further. So as this trough digs a little bit further in, it's going to put any storm placement just a tad bit further south. So we could have more storm development across portions of central and southern Missouri now. Those will be impacting portions of western Tennessee, getting into northern periphery of Mississippi and Alabama here. We still have some sea breeze action and the tropical wave. There's a lot less shear in Florida, so they have completely wiped away any drought they've had over the last couple of months. Now, in fact, I was reading yesterday that Fort Lauderdale had, well above average precipitation, but just 175 miles towards Sarasota, it's really been pretty dry. So it's amazing how the transition from one side of the state to another has seen just record rainfall, and you've seen your driest time on record so far in Sarasota. So it's pretty eye-opening to see how the weather can change just, literally 175 miles away. But here's the setup going for Monday, right? So what you've heard a lot in the headlines a lot is really this ridge. I mean, it's hot in summer, but this is going to be your hottest week of summer, right? So over time, between the highs and the lows across the southern plains, you're going to see your hottest temperatures yet for the summer in portions of Oklahoma, a good part of the panhandle, and to North Texas. That swings into the southeast, really dominates this region. So if you're under this ridge of high pressure, you've got little to no rain to speak of, and you got a lot of heat, and some of those could be record heat, as you're going to be experiencing those really nice cooler conditions. In fact, 5 to 10 degrees below average. So we're talking 70s, folks. That's going to be beautiful skies up there, especially as you go into Monday and Tuesday. And lows in the 50s. Some areas could sneak down in the 40s. So yeah, that's going to be really comfortable conditions. But you can see the further south you live, you're away from that trough. And if you're away from that trough, you're going to be under that ridge of high pressure. So yeah, you're going to be experiencing all that heat conditions. But out west, again, the far extreme portions of the coastal regions haven't really experienced that too bad a variety, especially up in the Northwest. It hasn't really been that bad of all for much of the summer. So here's the setup for Tuesday. There's the ridge, folks, right? I mean, it's just on the northern periphery of this ridge. So that's where any potential rain or storm development will be. In the southern parts of that, they've got all the sinking air and not a drop to speak of. So on Wednesday, here's the setup on the precipitable water index away from this ridge, right? So you could be looking at more storm development. Wednesday could be another fairly decent, significant day for severe storms with, as they fishtail across portions of Iowa again, parts of Illinois, getting into Missouri, probably likely heading into western Tennessee. This is the main area that we'll be focused on as we get closer to the middle of the week for storm potential and severe storm potential. And it's just on the northern periphery. So the good thing that's come out of this week, combination of the Tutlow and some of these eastern Pacific storms that's been forming, then that's going to highlight the monsoonal flow. So that's going to bring welcome rains to the desert Southwest. So that's going to be the mechanism that's going to drop those temperatures, even though they might be a short-lived below the 110, breaking that streak there in Phoenix. But those are going to lift up in Utah as well as into Colorado. So this is the boundary where we're going to be having storm development traversing up and over the ridge. And there's the placement of the heavier storms and the heavier rains they're going to impacting for the next 5 days. So beyond that, let's take you out in the tropics, right? So we've had a lot of little African waves that's come off the coast, and we've had a lot of Saharan dust, but we really haven't had much shear. So we get these storms that form. Right now we have one out there, 70% probability it does become Tropical Storm Emily, and I do in fact think it does, but it's going to be going well out to sea, out in the open water. So if you go beyond that and head into the Caribbean, this is a shear map, folks. So we've had a lot of shear. This is typically what El Nino brings, is a lot of shear. So once the shear in the Caribbean has really been really high, as well as into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why we really haven't seen anything come close out here. If it does come close, it gets shut down quickly. So these storms have been gravitating towards the lesser shear environment and then really kind of out in the open water. So if you look beyond the next 10 days where maybe the tropical storm activity could be, there's that little tropical wave off the east coast that's going to be heading out to sea. And if this little vorticity out here in the open waters, NHC gives it a 70% probability of forming, likely it does and takes the name Emily. But if it does form, it will be racing out to sea as well, but nothing to speak of for the next 10 days, at least through the first week of August. So but the heat's going to be the real deal, folks. Across the southern plains, across the southeast, we are going to be seeing numerous records break, probably the highest temperatures you've seen so far this summer, but it's going to be completely different story if you go further north, up here in the Ohio Valley, up here especially in the mid-Atlantic, and definitely especially up in New England. You head to Vermont, you head to New Hampshire, you head into Maine, you're going to be experiencing some really nice, comfortable, even almost spring-like conditions up there. But there's by Friday, so you can see the ridge really doesn't budge, right? So that's why you're over time, it's going to be the hottest week that you've seen down here in the southern plains, as the relentless heat just continues to expand and maximize itself over those same regions. So if the breakdown for the next 7 days kind of looks like this, right? So you got the trough coming in, and it's going to dig a little bit further, but over the next 7 days, those are overall 5 to 10 degrees below average. So yes, those temperatures in the 80s and the 70s during the daytime and the 50s at night are going to be feeling really nice. And then further south, there's your above average temperature anomalies, right? Where the ridge is, that's where you're going to be seeing the highest averages. And then you got the weakness in the trough out here along the west coast, and you're going to be seeing comfortable conditions out there. So the breakdown on the precipitation front kind of looks like this, with the ridge locked over the southern plains and the southeast. It's going to put any storm development to the north of that, right? So they're going to have storms blowing up across portions of Wyoming, coming across the Dakotas, coming across the Nebraska here, portions of Iowa, and then heading into northwestern portions of Missouri, getting into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and then the northeast continues to remain unsettled. So with the trough coming in and these systems coming in as well, you're still going to be adding those above average precipitation anomalies for your region. So, but there are some signs that you have to go out about 10 days. So with that trough coming in, there are signs once you go beyond, say, August the 7th timeframe. You got the ridge of high pressure. There's another potential storm out there in the open waters of the Eastern Pacific. But the ridge backs off, right? It backs off into the Four Corners region. In fact, it really sneaks over, parts itself over Arizona again, really parts itself over California. But you can see the weakness, right? There's a lot less reds showing up on the map. That allows this backdoor trough to sneak in. So, right, it doesn't have the ridge to block that trough anymore. It's going to allow it to sneak in with kind of a backdoor front. And with that, it's going to bring temperatures, not like a cold front, but it's going to be cooler than what you've experienced for the next 10 days. Definitely going to be a welcome sight, even though it might be short-lived. It's still going to be a welcome sight across the southeast, across portions of the southern plains. Even if it's a day or two, they'll take anything they can get out there, because it's been relentless this summer. And there's the precipitation front. So obviously with that trough coming in, the ridge would be backing off in the west coast. That allows the precipitation to sneak further south. So these areas that have been bone dry at least get some hints over Arkansas and Louisiana, into portions of Mississippi, out here in western Tennessee and Alabama, but portions of Oklahoma, and yeah, even likely portions of North Texas could even have opportunities for rain chances to come in with that trough coming, backing off to the west coast. So there are subtle changes that week around the 7th, 8th, or 9th, bringing slightly cooler conditions below 100 but in bringing some rain opportunities back in the picture by then. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.